One of my many interests is World War II aircraft. Of those, my two favorites are the F-4U Corsair fighter and the B-25 Mitchell bomber because they are unique. There's nothing else like them. The third item that I really love is the Queen, the B-17. And I'm going to be talking today about the B-17. It is just a unique aircraft. It started out before the war and was a proposal by Boeing to build an aircraft that could bomb and could survive. The B-17 has a crew of 10. It has tail, waist, ball, and top guns, as well as in the nose that are manned by the bombardier. It's an awesome machine. It was built to survive. Although many of them were shot down, many of them brought crews back with horrible damage, but they came home. Sometimes, as one of the movies talks about, on a wing and a prayer. And that is not very much from the truth. One of them came home, landed, and sometime later, the tail fell off of it. Not just the tail wings, but a whole big section of the tail. And I love this plane. The picture I'm going to show here is one of it taking off at the Thomasville airport when it was here in 2012. The plane that's being featured is the plane that had the nose art of 909. 909, unfortunately, came to its end at Hartford, Connecticut a few years ago when one of the engines failed and the wrong engine was feathered, and they were unable to keep enough altitude to get back to the runway. That is a story in itself, and I'm going to leave you with just that much. This picture shows 909 just lifting off. One of the things that always strikes me is the tail wheel, its size. This plane weighed upwards of 30,000 pounds at times when it was taking off. Got three wheels and none of them are big, and that tail wheel is tiny. This is my favorite picture of 909. Well, one of two. The other one is of 909 by itself. This is World War II. 909 is the B-17 coming in, and Witchcraft is a B-24 that unfortunately you can only see about 3/4 of. Witchcraft is actually much closer to us, and the runway is back. If you take a look down at the bottom right of the picture, you'll see the blast deflector that prevents blowing cars off of Route 30. And if you look below the engine 2 of Witchcraft, you'll see a car. That car is actually on Route 30, US Route 30. Here we see 909 taxiing back into the stand, and you can see the nose art. Not real well. I'll get another picture of it. But if you see the blue circle on the nose, just behind it, in white letters, is 909. And there's the nose art that I was talking about. Notice the number of bombs representing the number of missions. Here's a nameplate. This engine built under license from Wright Aeronautical Corporation, protected by one or more of the following patents. This engine was made by the Studebaker Corporation Aviation Division. This is the result of many of the manufacturing things that were done during World War II. Although the B-17 was a Boeing product, many of those were built by other companies. The B-24, for example, many of those were built by Ford Motor Company. Let's go inside. This is the navigator's table inside the plane back here. This is where the navigator would lay out his maps and charts to plot the course. This is the ball gunner's position, looking up, and he's up there. You can see an ammo belt off to each side of the what looks like a square strut. That square strut is not a square strut. It's what's called by the guys that flew Ma Deuce, the M2 50 caliber machine guns. He sat in the middle and fired them. This turret was powered so that he could follow German fighters fast. I'm going to get into my area here a little more. The 17 carried more than one radio. These are, on the top two, are Arc 5 transmitters, and the bottom are Arc 5 receivers. This allowed the radio man to monitor and also transmit. If you look above him, these are control cables. This plane didn't have all the niceties of a commercial airliner where everything's hidden behind pretty panels. The Arc 5s fed a system that was partially shown here, actually fully shown here, of matching units to match the transmitters to the antennas. To be very efficient, an antenna has to be either quarter or half wavelength. That means at 7 megahertz, it has to be around 20 meters. And if it's not that, then you've got to provide capacitance and inductance to balance that out. And these were the matching units to do that. That matching is an art in itself. The B-17 had two antennas. One of those antennas was strung from the tip of the tail out to the just behind the ball gunner, which you can see on this picture. That was a nice antenna if you weren't too far away. But if you were at a distance, you needed a better antenna. And that antenna was here. This is a winch that had wire on it that was extended, of course, after they were in flight. It had a small piece on the end of it, like an egg, that when it was reeled out, the hole in the floor has been filled in on this aircraft. But this winch, it's a motor with a little reel stuff on it that gets rolled out. There was another position off to the side that could be used for second radio equipment. I believe this was used by the navigator because it's a receive only, and they would be able to do direction finding to find out where certain radio stations were, to help them find targets or find their way back home. And this picture shows the tail, I believe, yep, with the antenna. Notice the insulator is used to get the proper length. Again, it's too short for really good performance, but it did work when you were on the ground or near your base. This picture is not from 909. This is from Witchcraft. This is the egg-shaped thing that would be trailed out. It's there on Witchcraft. was removed on 909, but it shows well. And this thing would be trailed out a couple hundred feet. This is the thing that helped the engines on the B-17 be able to operate at 20 to 30,000 feet. It's a turbocharger. The exhaust gas comes back through here, spins a turbine in here. Not sure of what this one is, but I know most of the turbochargers I've seen spin at about 12,000 RPM. The other side of it above is ramming air into the intake manifold of the engines to kind of keep the pressure like it would be somewhere near sea level when you're up at altitude. This enabled the planes to fly higher, which, number one, reduces air drag, and number two, makes it more difficult for fighters to get up to it. I mentioned earlier that there was another picture that I really liked. This is the B-17-909 coming in at Thomasville. And by the way, for those who don't know, Thomasville Airport is about probably 4 or 5 miles west of York, Pennsylvania. And that's about 20 miles east of Gettysburg. Everybody seems to know where Gettysburg is better. Notice the small tail wheel. This, just a whole lot of things about that aircraft that is awesome. And this is the cockpit. 2 guys sat here, flew it. I look at this and it looks complicated. But get a picture of a 737 or a 747 or an Airbus, and you'll think this looks simple. The original Model 100 that was built by Boeing crashed on its first flight that the Army was flying it after its test pilots and Boeing's pilots flying it from the West Coast in. The Army took it over and they crashed it on the first flight. They crashed it literally on the runway. What happened, there was a locking mechanism on the controls to keep the wind on the runway, when it was parked, from messing with the control surface. And they didn't unlock it. Somehow they didn't remember to do that. And they crashed first Model 100. The first B-17, quote, really crashed the first time the Army Air Force tried to fly it. And I always have to get a picture of a pretty girl. She was out there taking photographs with me, and we had some fun that day. And another one. This is my son, grandson, and daughter-in-law under, I believe that's Witchcraft's engine, not 909's. This is how I have fun. I take pictures, and then I try to put them up where somebody can look at them. Of these, the other favorite picture I have is this one with the bird halfway down the runway. Or, well, not halfway down, with the bird taking off. I was privileged to be along the runway, maybe 100 yards off to the side of this runway that's a couple feet short of a mile. And I was down in this area when the B-25 took off. Now that's 3,500 horsepower. This, the B-17, is 5,200. And that B-25 standing 100 yards off the runway, I could feel my chest being beaten by the noise of that aircraft. Can't imagine what it would have been like to stand along a runway where a whole flight of these were taking. Again, this is from the Thomasville airport. Oh, yeah, I got them all. And it's just kind of an interesting thing. This is the first time I've tried to do one of these. I'm going to be doing a couple more and see how they go. This is Ralph Brandt from the Fireside.